Hello everyone, my name is Manolis Finorolakis, the Community Manager of Patch of Land and founder of Reality Crowd TV, and welcome to the monthly real estate crowdfunding webinar, episode 5. We have a great show today, but before we get to the details, I just want to lay out a few ground rules. We have a lot of great people watching us from around the world. Many of you are watching from the Patch of Land website, and we thank you. Some of you are watching from Google Hangouts, and we thank you for that as well. And many of you are watching from within the virtual incubator and crowdfunding network. If you have any questions, you could feel free to actually post the questions in the Google Hangout or in the incubator. And for any of you who have any questions in general about real estate crowdfunding after the show, feel free to message manolis@patchofland.com and we'll get those questions answered for you. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our guests. Our first guest is our returning champion. He's the co-host of the show. We have Douglas Cochran, who is the SVP of Underwriting and Acquisitions at Patch of Land. And Doug, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thanks, Manolis. It's great to be back as the reigning champion. Again, my name is Doug Cochran. I'm Senior VP of Underwriting and Acquisitions at Patch of Land. I come with a long real estate background of being a flipper, an appraiser, a loan officer, underwriter, project manager of construction sites. I bring all that experience to our underwriting team here at Patch of Land.
Great, and Doug, thank you once again for joining us. Your wealth of experience is invaluable to this webinar, so thank you so much. And tonight we actually have a very special guest. He's a real estate investor, a partner with Patch of Land, and he is the founder of the Best Real Estate Investment Advice Ever show. Please welcome Joe Fairless. And Joe, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, if Doug is the reigning champion, then I guess I'll be the challenger for today's episode. My name's Joe Fairless. As you mentioned, Manolis, I'm the host of the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show. I have a background in advertising and marketing, where I worked at a New York City ad agency right out of college, graduated in 2005, became the youngest vice president of that agency, and then I was investing in real estate on the side, and then started my own real estate investing company 2 years ago, raised over $1 million, bought a large apartment community, and now I control over $7 million worth of real estate, and excited to be on the show.
Excellent, Joe. Thank you so much. I can't wait to dig into your background a little bit later because you have a lot of great experience and we'd love to learn more about that. As we start every show, because the topic is real estate crowdfunding, Patch of Land has created a wonderful video that really encapsulates what this industry is all about, specifically through the Patch of Land platform. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can actually play that video so the audience can all be on the same page as to what real estate crowdfunding is and how it's done through Patch of Land.
How do we take something that is traditionally very, very hyper-local and translate that into a national marketplace, or even an international marketplace, and make it completely transparent online? We fund experienced real estate developers and investors all across the country to make really great projects happen. And we use the new industry of crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending to actually make that happen. We had the choice very early on to go after both equity investments or debt investments, and we chose to go with what we consider to be the largest market, the most lucrative market, the most secure market, and quite simply the easiest market to bridge between the old world of traditional financing and this new online crowdfunding e-commerce world, and that's debt. So we are actually building the ability to compress our underwriting through a really, really strong algorithmic understanding of our underlying assets. We're able to pull hundreds of data points on each individual property, about 95% of all properties across the United States, and bring those projects into an online e-commerce system and make it available to just about everyone.
The technology is necessary because we live in a world where these sorts of loans are needing to be closed in the same day. These projects are rehab projects which are leaving the market in no time, and we can have a loan application pre-scored and due diligence information collected before one human on our team even sees the application. And then as it's processed through our originations and underwriting, it receives better and more accurate and more qualitative due diligence information. 100% of the modules we build on top of these open source frameworks are wholly owned intellectual property by us. And they do things like reserve investments and allow developers to place submissions for their own projects. All of the back-end loan servicing and origination and underwriting engine is ours and is built on some of the same open source frameworks.
Really, the world of crowdfunding or peer-to-peer is the 21st century terminology for what was previously loan syndication or just syndication as a whole. Crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending will continue to evolve and grow over the next 5 to 10 years. The projections are quite astounding, and we're glad to be a part of it, and we got in there early on. I didn't want to wait around and watch this new opportunity pass me by. That's why I decided to partner with two guys who were already in the field and needed some help and some guidance from a chairman perspective, such as myself, that has the real estate knowledge and the technology knowledge and some financial ability to be able to help them grow.
It's been incredible to see it grow like wildfire when we move into an area and work gets done and we have people calling or saying, hey, I drove by and I saw that on your website, or I live in the neighborhood and that's really awesome. I want to be able to invest in people that I believe are doing a good job.
Basically, a group of very passionate, like-minded individuals who want to see a very conservative legal industry being pushed forward. We'd like to see the increasing adoption of technology. We'd like to see more efficiencies in the system. So Patch of Land is a 506c company. That's how we differentiate ourselves from some of the other crowdfunding companies out there. What that essentially means is we are allowed to generally solicit, even though it's still private placement, but we still are governed by all federal and state securities laws.
It's a new phase in real estate, or something new, bringing real estate developers together with people who want to invest in their projects and believe in their projects. That's what real estate crowdfunding is, like giving an avenue to these real estate developers who have good projects and good ideas and have no other place to go. Our investors know what to expect. That's why we get a lot of repeat business. They know and trust us. They know our due diligence is good and we're transparent, and we're always available for questions.
So I think crowdfunding in the future is going to be the way that people borrow from other individuals versus dealing with the banks. I think today we fit a very unique niche in terms of how hard money becomes more transparent in the market. To me, this is going to be the future of how lending is going to be done, and I like the team as well as the opportunity to grow communities through crowdfunding.
Excellent. So that really gives the viewers a little bit of a background as to what real estate crowdfunding is, as well as how it's done through Patch of Land. We'll be getting into more details about crowdfunding a little bit later on in this webinar, but now I'd actually like to turn the attention back to Joe. Joe alluded to his success in real estate, to his career that he's built for himself, and I would actually love to. Excuse me. I would actually love to ask Joe about, who was Joe before the success? Where were you raised? Is your family in the real estate industry? Where'd you go to school? We'd like to kind of know more of who is Joe as the individual.
Sure. Well, I am from Texas, Fort Worth, specifically, and if you're from the Fort Worth, Dallas area, then I went to Aledo High School. I graduated in 2000 of high school, then I actually played, I tried to walk on to play football at Blinn Junior College in Brenham, Texas. Didn't make the team, but I still wanted to play football, so I went to Mary Hardin Baylor, which is a Division III school, and I actually played a year of football there, got that completely out of my system, and then I went to Texas Tech and I finished up my degree, which was in advertising. I knew once I was in advertising I wanted to go to New York City because that's the perception is that's where the best of the best are in advertising. Whether that's true or not, that's just what the perception seems to be. So I went to New York City, had a job right out of college at an ad agency on Madison Avenue, and I worked my way up for, let's see, I guess like 7 years, where I was the youngest vice president of an agency. And while I was working in advertising, I was also studying investing, and then I gravitated towards real estate, and then I started buying single-family homes on the side, and that led me to where I'm at now, where it kind of snowballed from there.
Wonderful. And so to get to that point of feeling confident actually moving ahead and investing in real estate, who was your mentor? How did you learn the ropes of real estate investing so that you felt comfortable to go ahead and do it yourself?
Well, the first thing, and this is what I know when people are listening, it's less about what I did and more about how can I apply it to your life. And so I'll tell you what I did, and I think because what I did can also be applied to everybody else's life if they are entering into real estate or if they're kind of getting started initially. And what I recommend doing and what I did is I read a whole lot. I just read. I immersed myself. I didn't know anything about real estate at all. I didn't know anything about investing, so I read the book Investing for Dummies. And in that book, it lays out 3 different types of investing. 1 is investing in stocks and bonds, 2 is investing in LLCs or startups, and 3 is investing in real estate. And I just naturally gravitated towards real estate because I like how I can influence the outcome of real estate. So once I started learning that, then I felt like I had enough knowledge to buy a single-family home. Because in my mind, it was pretty straightforward. You just need to know how much will it rent for, how much does it cost to be fixed up to have someone move in, and how much do I have to pay for it. Those are really the 3 things that I looked at. And so I was living in New York City, and I bought my first place in Duncanville, Texas, which is just south of Dallas. And that was in 2009, and I lucked out because I bought in 2009. It wasn't because I was timing the market perfectly. I just didn't have any money to invest until 2009, and it was very fortuitous. So I bought my first place in 2009, and once I got my first place, I continued. I saw the success of it. Well, initially we had to evict the very first tenant I had. So I definitely came out of the chute stumbling, and it took a while to get that tenant. But since then, I've had a long-standing tenant in that place since 2010, and I started learning more and more after that from different seminars. I went to a Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar. I went to the $300 one, not the $10,000 one, and I learned. It's a 3-day seminar, and I learned a lot. And I've read a whole lot of books. Like if you looked at my place, I mean, I've got a couple really large bookshelves full of books. And what I do is I don't not only just read, but I reach out to the authors as well. And that's actually how I got one of my mentors, is through that outreach, and he helped me learn multifamily. So my story is really educating myself with books, educating myself with the seminars and shows like this and podcasts like that are out there, and then applying. And then once I get to a point where I feel that I've plateaued without somebody else's one-on-one guidance, then I find someone who's doing successfully what I want to do, reach out to him or her, and have some sort of partnership with them.
And that sounds like a great recipe. I mean, people would be surprised how flattering it is to get someone to reach out to you after reading something that you wrote. The accessibility of the experts are really not out of reach for many people, and so that's really great that you were able to identify that as a pathway early on. I also like the whole reading part of this. I mean, you know, if you don't have a natural mentor in your life, you know, the books, you know, there are plenty of mentors that can take the place of someone in person, and through that knowledge and through that transformation that you went through personally, you were able to speak the language of the industry, and then you were able to get the mentors because they saw that you did your personal work to get to the level of credibility.
Yes.
Great.
Exactly.
Great. And Doug, from, you know, I know you as well have an extensive career in real estate. Do you have a similar story of how you got started as well that you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually, it's funny, as Joe was talking, I was relating to a lot of it because I got into real estate back in it was about 89 or 90, and it really started off from reading books. I just moved up to Boston, and I just kind of got really interested in real estate, and just I couldn't. There wasn't enough books I could get my hands on reading about it, then I just took the plunge. You know, I just started doing research about Boston, different areas of Boston. It was a recession at the time. There were a lot of foreclosures at the time, so I just saw the opportunities. I started learning about auctions, and going to auctions and just kind of watching and seeing who was there. And I kept seeing the same people there, and I started talking to those guys and just learning from them. And watching and how the auctions took place, and you know, the techniques of buying from auctions. And then finally I stepped up and started bidding myself, and doing, you know, my research ahead of time. And you know, back then it was a lot harder. You had to actually go to the Registry of Deeds and dig through all the books. You know, you hear about books and pages, and you know, at the Registry of Deeds, but you actually had to go there. There wasn't the internet, so it was kind of old school, where, you know, and you know, I learned from being up there. You know, there was all the guys who were doing the title searches, and I got to know those guys. Those same guys, and they were teaching me how to dig through title work and see, you know, how to read a title and you know, anything that might be attached to it and things like that. So it was really just hands-on, grinding it out, asking a lot of questions, and from there, then it was you know, buying properties and talking to friends who bought property, and you know, having friends who were really great painters or carpenters or things like that, and bringing them on board, helping me, you know, do the rental work and learning from them how to, you know, how to tear apart a kitchen and things like that. So it was just little by little, and then from there I said, you know what, I want to learn more about real estate, and that's when I started thinking about getting my real estate appraisal license. So I studied for that, took all the courses, got my license, got a job as an appraiser. You know, I just went full head first into everything with it, and continued to buy more property, and you know, having the appraisal license helped me, you know, be able to evaluate property faster, and having some tools available to me to help evaluate properties. From there, I started just doing a lot of work with. I got to be friends with a really high-producing loan officer. I just happened to be doing a lot of his appraisals in the downtown Boston area. We got to be friends. He brought me on as an originator. He saw that I had good sales skills and things like that, and that I was, you know, eager to learn more about it. So, you know, next step for me was learning about finance and how to finance properties, and that's how I got into originating. From there, you know, I went to a couple different mortgage companies, started learning more about, you know, the in-depth stuff of underwriting and due diligence and things like that, and learning from the underwriters in those companies. Eventually, that eventually led to working with a friend of mine who was had his own real estate company, a developer, and he needed somebody he could trust on site for his project management, and oversee the sites. And from there, I learned from him all the things from ground up. He was doing ground up construction on apartment buildings. So that's it's really kind of diving in and learning more and just asking a lot of questions. Always asking questions. That's how I got into how I got here at Patch of Land was I felt like I just wanted to learn more about real estate. And I got on the internet, started learning what else is out there in real estate, what's something new and exciting and something that I haven't found out about yet, and started reading about crowdfunding and learning more and more about it and finding out who the leaders were in the space. And I had wanting to move out to Los Angeles, and I picked up the phone and as Joe said, just reaching out to mentors or whatever, I just picked up the phone and called Patch of Land, and I happened to get Carlo Tabibi on the phone, who's our chairman, and sold him, and got me involved with the company, and they invited me out for an interview, and I had the skills and skill set and experience that they were looking for. So it really just kind of snowballed from there, and I moved out here, and it's been just over a year.
That's great, Doug. I mean, and in both of your experiences, it shows that it takes time. Things don't just happen overnight in most cases. I mean, in some cases they do, but in most cases it is a long period of learning, experimenting, diving in head first, as you both had the courage to do, that then brought you the success you currently have. And so with that said, I want to acknowledge that we do have a few questions, but I want to get to the crowdfunding segment shortly. But Mike Waller and Brian Woodbridge will get to your questions shortly. Thank you for asking them. Before we get to those questions, Joe, I'd like to chat about your podcast, the Best Ever Real Estate Investing Advice podcast. And through that podcast, I mean, tell us about some of the guests you've interviewed. I know you interviewed Doug as well. And with those interviews, I mean, what is some of the best advice that you learned through interviewing the thought leaders within real estate?
Yeah, I had to interview the champion of this webinar for my show, obviously, so that's a given. So on my show, I've interviewed a lot of people from Barbara Corcoran with Shark Tank to actually this Friday, Robert Kiyosaki is going to be on the show, and Dean Graziosi, to Doug, to many others. And I've learned a lot. I mean, what I've learned is that having a show like this allows me to expand my group of friends, allows me to be more valuable to my business and my client's business, and it allows me to learn on a daily basis. I mean, it's pretty incredible. It gives me the license to speak to the top of the top. There's no way I'd be able to have a 30-minute conversation with Barbara Corcoran if I didn't have this show. And as a result of having the show, it allows me to have those conversations. So what have I learned? Well, I've learned a lot, but I actually put together for this conversation a top 7 list of top 7 things I've learned from the show, and in no particular order. But I did actually end number 7 with crowdfunding, so it would be a natural segue for us to talk more about crowdfunding. But we'll start with number 1. We'll go to 7. So number 1 is one thing I learned is say no to focus on one thing. Say no to a whole lot of things so that we can focus on the thing that's most important. Jay Papasan, who co-authored many best-selling books with Gary Keller from Keller Williams, actually told me that, and that's actually one of their books as well. And he talks about just the importance of of identifying what it is that we're most interested in, that we enjoy the most, and then focusing on that one thing, and then saying no to a lot of other things. And I've personally had to kind of shift my focus recently and on an ongoing basis to kind of take a fresh look, like, okay, what do I really want to focus on and what's getting me the most results? Number 2 is to take money that you make and build your business by making strategic hires. That came from Barbara Corcoran. And what she does is she finds what her team members love to do, and then she has them do that. So an example is she was on a plane, and a flight attendant was talking to an upset customer, an upset passenger on the plane, and his potatoes were like cold, or they weren't cheesy enough. I forget what it was. It's something ridiculous. And the flight attendant said, I am so upset with you, Mr. Cheesy Potatoes. You need to get warmer and you need to get cheesier. I just don't know what I'm going to do with you. And she was just having everybody in a riot, and they were just loving it. And Barbara saw that she had a gift for sales, and she had a gift for connecting with others. So Barbara had her hired on her team within a month. And that's the type of stuff that whenever I hire people, I want to know what they really enjoy doing, because ultimately what you enjoy doing, you'll be really good at. I mean, everyone's heard that before, right? Well, what Barbara does, though, is she takes it a step further, and she says anytime she has money from her company, she always looks first and foremost to make a hire with someone who loves what they do and it fills a need for her organization. Number 3 is I interviewed one of my good friends, Matt Britton, and he recently wrote the book Youth Nation. And he talks about, he's a millennial expert. He knows everything there is about millennials. And in his book Youth Nation, and on the interview with him, he mentioned that millennials are moving to the cities in droves, and especially on the East Coast. So as a real estate investor, I take that information and I look at the different types of opportunities that I can bring and create for my investors as a result of knowing that this is going to be a long-term trend, because people just aren't getting married as quickly as they used to, and they're more hesitant to buy those homes. So obviously rentals are going to be even better, and rentals in certain cities are going to be at a premium, so it's really trying to stay one step ahead of that game. Number 4 is buy your first house with the intention it will be a rental property. And that kind of blew my mind, because I think intellectually I understand, I would think that, but whenever I heard the best ever guest mention that, I was like, that makes sense, because if you think about it, for any guests out there, any listeners who are watching the show, think about the first house that you bought and how long did you actually live in it. Typically, it's about 3 to 5 years. Maybe it was longer for you, or maybe it was shorter for you. But if you buy it with the intention that it will be an investment property, then you're going to set yourself up for a lot of success in the future as you build your portfolio and you continue to grow. Number 5. And this is where my career is headed and what my personal path is kind of going towards, and that is raising money is the top of the real estate mountain. I wholeheartedly believe that, and that's why Patch of Land is so darn successful, because they have the ability to raise money, and any entity, whether it's a person or whether it's a person's business or whether it's a large company, if they have the ability to raise cash, then they can be strategic where they put that cash. And they're going to control the deal, they're going to attract the deal, they're going to become a deal magnet. 6 is shift from transactions to relationships. This sounds kind of fluffy, and I understand it sounds like, oh, shift from transaction to relationships. Well, it's really important, because whenever we think about a transaction, it's a very one-off type of thing. But when we think about a relationship, then we approach it differently. And when we approach it differently, then we're going to think of it more of a long-term play, and we're going to think about what needs does the seller or buyer have that I can provide. And quite frankly, even if it is a one-off transaction, when we approach it as a relationship, we're going to be more successful with that transaction because we're going to quickly identify what needs we're trying to meet of theirs, and we're going to meet those needs, whether it's meeting their price, but then coming up with better, more favorable terms, or vice versa. And then 7, segueing into a larger conversation, is crowdfunding. I've done a lot of interviews with Doug and Adapia and other members of their team, and other crowdfunding platforms too on my show. And what I love about Patch of Land, and what quite frankly, just from a business differentiation standpoint, is that they have already raised the money for you. All you have to do is qualify yourself and qualify the deal. I think that is a freaking beautiful business model, because not all crowdfunding platforms, or most crowdfunding platforms, can't say that, where they'll pre-fund the deal. And with crowdfunding, the thing I've learned is the money's just waiting there. It's just a matter of building a relationship with the crowdfunding platform like Patch of Land, and then qualifying yourself in the deal.
Wow. Joe, that was an incredible top 7 list. I was wondering, would you be able to send that to us after the show so we could send it to the audience as well? Would that be possible?
That would be possible.
Awesome, because that was so much information and so much great content that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking for the top 7 list. Doug, out of the top 7, obviously you like number 7.
That's pretty good. I like that one.
But would you like to add any commentary on Joe's top 7 list?
Yeah, it's funny. I wrote down a couple of two in particular that popped out to me was actually 3. The Barbara Corcoran advice of hiring people who love what they do, and that's that's such a big thing here at Patch of Land that. We interview a lot of people for positions, and we're really very conscious of company culture and fit, and people who really love what they do. It makes for a great work environment, and it translates, I think, to our borrowers as well. And then leading into his other comment of shift from transition to relationship. And looking to meet the needs of our borrowers. That's something that we actually talk about a lot here at Patch of Land. It's something that I've always kind of carried through when I was a loan officer. Was I was very big about relationship building with my clients. I was happy to say in the 12+ years that I was a loan officer, I actually kept my very first client throughout my career, and refied him and multiple times, got him his first purchase, got him his second purchase when he got married, started having kids, and it was about building a relationship with him, so that was two little gems from Joe. And also, actually, the next book I'm going to probably read is the Millennial Youth, and see what that's about. I think that's just a good book on society and how it's changing, and with that how the economy are changing as well. With the millennials that are moving into urban areas. It's not about going out, getting married and moving out to the suburbs so much anymore. I've always lived in the city. I grew up in the suburbs, and from the time I left, for college, I was in the city. I went to college in the city. I was at Fordham in the Bronx, and since then I was always either in Manhattan, I was in Boston, and now I'm in Los Angeles. So interesting stuff there, Joe. Thank you for those gems.
Well, I have a lot to live up to with you being on this show, so I had to come prepared.
We're gonna be in for a treat. But before we end tonight, there's going to be a lightning round later. So just stay tuned, everybody. This is going to be a very good show. That was a great transition, by the way, Joe, into crowdfunding. And at this point, I'd actually like to answer a couple of these questions and pose them to Doug. A gentleman named Mike Walker. Thank you for the question, Mike. His question was: I have a fairly seasoned I have a fairly seasoned past as a real estate investor, and I'm wondering how quickly crowdfunding can work for specific investments. So Doug, if Mike Walker was going to get a loan, a crowdfunded loan from Patch of Land, how quickly can he expect to get funded, and what is the process from briefly from start to finish as to what would need to happen for him to get funded that quickly?
Sure. We typically fund our loans in about 2 weeks. Really just depends a lot of it depends on how organized our borrower is. So I've had loans close in as quickly as 5 days with very experienced borrowers who had every document that we were looking for. Title was done, all of that. But on average, we're looking at about 2 weeks. The process is very simple. It's going to our website, patchofland.com, signing up, and submitting a loan application online. A loan officer will contact you directly, help you structure the deal, find out what your needs are, what you're looking to do with the deal, start collecting documentation from you. We get the appraisal ordered, we get it into underwriting, we get title ordered, and you're closed. So it's really as responsive as you are to the loan officers and the types of documentation that we need, as quickly as you get closed. Typically the two things that will slow us down is we do get full appraisals. We get an as-is and a subject-to value on our appraisals. That typically takes about a week to get, as well as the title. Title takes about a week as well, barring any clouds that may be on title or anything like that that might need to be worked out prior to close. But if everything runs smoothly, it's easily done in 2 weeks.
Excellent. And one thing I liked about Mike's question too is he mentioned he's a fairly seasoned investor. So obviously, Patch of Land would love to fund everybody, but you do have certain criteria for the developers who bring the deal to your platform. Typically, what do you like to see from that investor perspective? The experience and the credit requirements and those types of things, in order to feel confident that the borrower will be a good credit risk?
Yeah, great question, very legit question. We typically, as a general guideline, we want to see 5 deals in the last 3 years or something to that equivalent. And we want experienced borrowers, because if you're going to do rehab work, as any experienced borrower would know, you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into, once you start breaking down walls and things like that, things happen. So we want people who are experienced, who know to expect those little bumps in the road, and that they're experienced in dealing with them. And it shows that they can do a project from start to finish. That's not to say that you have to have 5 deals in 3 years, but we want something equivalent to that. It might be somebody who's been a contractor for 10 years and they've done 3 flips in the last 2-3 years. It could be a realtor with experience, somebody who's had their hands in real estate for a while, that can bring that kind of experience. And maybe they've just started out in the last 2-3 years, starting to flip properties, but they have experience. They know what they're doing. So it's a little bit subjective, but we just want to make sure that people are ready to take on the responsibility. We really don't want to work with a first-time flipper or developer. If he's got somebody who can partner up with them, a mentor, somebody who's got a lot of experience, we'll consider that. We'll look into that. If he wants to bring on his general contractor as a partner because he's got 10 years experience, we'll look at that as well. So it really, we try to be flexible with it, but we also want to make sure that it is a solid borrower that we're working with.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Doug. I think that's important to note. If and I'm sure Joe might have some ideas as well based on his explanation of how he got his start. If you don't have that particular background, if you don't have the 5 deals under your belt, there's creative ways that I'm sure you can partner with others to get that experience and leverage the experience of others. Have you seen that during your podcast of people getting their start by maybe they didn't have the experience themselves, but they were able to tag on to somebody else who then allowed them to qualify for a certain deal?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's how we get going. I mean, that's really the kind of the normal approach to getting started, because ultimately everybody who's in real estate had some challenge they had to overcome, whether it's whenever they started, whether it's lack of funds, whether it's lack of experience, whether it's lack of knowledge. And if it's lack of experience, it's a pretty darn simple solution. You partner up with someone who has the experience, you learn from them, you are included in the deal, you do whatever you need to do to add value to that deal, and then you start doing your own. That's really it.
And you know, I know that's definitely excellent advice. One clarification too, that kind of goes along with the qualifications, because some people might be asking, so how is this crowdfunding? Well, it's crowdfunding in a very unique way. What Patch of Land was able to do when they initially started was they were the pioneers of pre-funding. So when Doug goes through his due diligence process on a borrower, if he approves that borrower, those funds are pre-funded by Patch of Land's own account, so they will be able to close as quick as a hard money lender, and at a rate that is either more competitive or just as competitive as the lenders out there. The crowdfunding element of this is after the fact, after the developer has already funded their purchase of the property and they've begun the rehab. Then Patch of Land takes that negotiated interest rate and they pass it on to the investor, who ultimately is the crowdfunding investor. And at this time, the investor must be accredited. They must meet a certain income qualification. An accredited investor is someone who makes $200,000 a year or is worth $1 million in net worth, excluding the value of their home. That's a little bit higher if you're a couple, but ultimately anyone can bring a deal to the platform if they qualify. But at this time, the only people who can invest in a deal have to meet those wealth qualifications. Is there anything that I misrepresented, Doug?
No, that was spot on. You talked a bit about pre-funding our deals, where we come to the table with the money so that the borrower can purchase the property and get to work on their renovations, and then after that we open it up to the crowd, which is our accredited investors who come in and participate in the project. Yeah.
Excellent. And so for those who have been following the crowdfunding space as well, there was a recent development that may open up the investor pool to anyone, regardless of their income, and that was through Regulation A+. That is still not final yet. They're expecting that to be finalized in June, but there is an opportunity in the near future for certain crowdfunding investments to allow unaccredited investors to invest. And I know Patch of Land is also potentially looking into that as well. So with that said, we have another question by a gentleman named Brian Woodbridge. He writes, I have read about many investments in the United States and was wondering if it works here in Ontario, Canada. So I think the question is Patch of Land currently operating outside of the U.S.?
At the current time, we are not. We're only lending in the 50 states of the United States.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Brian, I did see something in the news recently, though, about a certain regulation passed in Canada relating to crowdfunding. So I would check with your country's specific rules and regulations, because I believe it was just last week that they moved forward on a crowdfunding initiative. So I hope that helps you. Another question from Mike as well. Mike asks, will Patch of Land work as a private equity partner with borrowers if the project involves several projects in one centrally focused area, serving the purpose similar to that of a fund? So does patch of land only work on on an individual property basis, or would they be willing to actually lend to a fund that would be investing in a more diverse pool of assets?
Well, we don't work with equity. We're not an equity lender, or doing JVs or anything like that. We're strictly debt. However, we will work with borrowers that have several properties, say in a centralized area, as the gentleman had asked. We will cross-collateralize properties. We're currently working on a couple deals right now where we're going to cross-collateralize properties that a borrower has or is looking to purchase, but it'll be strictly on a debt basis only.
Great. So we do have another question from Mike, and Mike, do not apologize. We love the questions, so keep them coming. Why will patch of land not work in Vermont? I see that it is a restricted state on your website.
Actually, we will work in Vermont now. We actually just did a deal in Vermont. There was some regulation that we had to work around. We were able to do so, but we actually just had a really exciting project. It was a library in Manchester, Vermont, Manchester Village, which is a historic little village, and borrower was purchasing the old library, which is a beautiful old Victorian-style library. It was built in 1895, I believe. It was a beautiful piece of architecture, and he's converting it into a single-family house because the library, the trustees of the library built a new library in the northern part of town and had this piece of property available. It was a big, beautiful space, and he's going to convert it into a large single-family home as a rental property in his portfolio, and it's right near a couple ski areas that I actually used to go skiing as a kid in that area, so I actually knew the town. So we are open for business in Vermont.
For a second, Doug, I thought you guys had something against hippies.
Nah, Ben and Jerry's is in Vermont. We're all about ice cream.
Excellent. So thank you for that, Michael, for the questions. And so, Joe, now that you're actively investing, and I believe you mentioned your investing company has $7 million under management in assets. What are you going to continue to do? What are your current plans, and then what are your plans for the future? Are you considering maybe doing a crowdfunding campaign? Hint, hint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with my stuff, I don't flip properties. So what I do is I raise money and buy multifamily properties, and we buy and hold for the medium to long term. So it would be more from an equity side where I would do the crowdfunding, unless I find the property that I want to do a quick turnaround on with multifamily. But as far as where I'm headed, I am headed just to continue to grow my equity raise capabilities. And that's why I'm so interested in crowdfunding, because there's always different channels that I think we need to pay attention to in certain industries, whether it's real estate or whether it's marketing or whatever. There's always certain things that are happening, and crowdfunding is the future. I'm convinced of that with real estate. Crowdfunding is the future, and the future is happening right now, especially with that thing that you mentioned in June. Should it continue to get passed through and be finalized, where it allows some unaccredited investors to invest, because that's huge. That's a huge deal. Just a small portion of the population is accredited, and a small portion of the accredited population knows about crowdfunding. So it's a really big deal, and where I'm headed is just continue. Right now I'm working on a development deal in the Cincinnati area, a large multifamily development deal, and I'm also got a couple other off-market deals I'm working on in that general area.
Wonderful. and so it sounds like you have an exciting future ahead of you. At this time, I would actually like Doug to initiate the lightning round, and before Doug does that, Joe, can you give a little background as to why this is a bit of payback?
Well, on my show,
it's not payback. There's no payback. This is fun. This is good stuff.
It's at my Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever podcast is a daily podcast, and it's formatted where there's no fluff. I interview the guest. I ask him or her their background. I ask them what their best real estate investing advice ever is. Then we go into the lightning round, where it's a series of best ever questions that I ask them. And you got to be on your toes, and you got to answer it quickly. And I think that's why Doug wanted to kind of turn the table, because he's been a guest and he's been under the spotlight on my show.
This is true. This is true. All right, Joe, are we ready for the lightning round? The best ever lightning round?
We're ready.
All right.
We're ready.
Here we go. What is the best ever book you've read?
Best ever book I've read. It depends on where I'm at in that moment, but right now it's The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Nice. What is the best ever personal growth experience that you've had, and what did you learn from it?
By far, becoming an entrepreneur, and what I've learned is that I can overcome anything as long as I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm enjoying it, because ultimately we all have a special talent, we all have a special gift. It's just a matter of identifying what that is and then just doing it and doing it and doing it.
Nice. And what is the best ever success habit you've practiced?
I model success after others. Anything I do in life, I identify who's at the top of the game, I learn from them, I deconstruct what they do, how they got there, and then I apply it in my own life.
Nice. And what's the best ever deal you've done?
By far the 168 unit deal in Cincinnati, because that was the first time I ever raised any money, and it set me on the path and a trajectory that's much higher than what I thought I could be at this stage of my career.
Nice. Very cool. And I'll let you off. Here's the last one. What's your best ever quote?
Best ever quote: "Secret to living is giving" by Tony Robbins. I live that in my life. I live by it. The more I give, the more filled up I am as a person, and the more I benefit financially, personally, and as long as I keep that at the forefront, as long as I give, and I go into relationships wanting to give, then it's returned tenfold.
Very good. You rose to the challenge, Joe. Great answers.
I've never thought of those answers, but I'm pretty darn familiar with those questions.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Glad I was able to put them out to you. So
yes,
good stuff.
No, that was great. The secret to living is giving. That is profound. I love that. Very good. Well, it looks like we are all through with questions. I'll give each of our guests kind of a last word and kind of tell the audience where they could find out more about you, when your next podcast is, and more about Patch of Land as well. So, Joe, feel free to give the last word to the audience.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on taking the steps to learn more about crowdfunding, learn more about my background, because we're kindred spirits. I do the same thing. I learn as much as I can from different people who are in the industry. So congrats to you for that. Now I recommend continuing to learn and continuing to take more action. So crowdfunding is the future. If you're not signed up on Patch of Land, which you likely are signed up on Patch of Land, but if you're not, sign up, develop a relationship with them, even if you don't have a deal, because it is important to get all of the preliminary stuff taken care of now, so that when you do have a deal, you're not scrambling at the end. And you can always go check out more crowdfunding information on my podcast. I actually have two custom podcast series with Patch of Land. One is called the Best Flippin' Series Ever. You can just Google that. Just Google Best Flippin' Series Ever, Patch of Land, and those episodes will come up. And the other one is called Best Crowdfunding Crash Course Ever. And you can check that out too, where we go and answer all the crowdfunding questions you have. We talk about success stories. We talk about the future of crowdfunding and everything in between. So recommend checking those two out. You can go to my website, joefairless.com, joefairless.com, and that's where the episodes are as well.
Excellent, Joe. It's been a true honor and pleasure to have you on the show and learning from you. And our audience, judging by all the questions, our audience definitely enjoyed it. So thank you so much for joining us. And Doug, a last word for the audience?
Last word for the audience is, always stay curious and try to expand your network of people. And I love the gem that Joe gave us of, reach out. Read a good book. Reach out to the authors. It's surprising how easy it is to connect with a lot of people out there. And more importantly, I'd also say, reach out to the two of you. You guys have really great podcasts and webinars. They're informative. They're interesting. You bring on some great guests. So I would say to the listeners here, dive into the knowledge that's out there, and Joe and Manolis are a wealth of information, and it's invaluable, the resource that they provide. So I've always enjoyed being a guest on both of their shows. Great people, extremely knowledgeable, and the way they support crowdfunding and Patch of Land is we can't thank them enough for their support on that. And getting the word out. So thank you both for having me on. Feel free to reach out to me at any time, or anybody here at Patch of Land, patchofland.com, and I can be reached at doug@patchofland.com as well.
Excellent, Doug. Thank you very much for the kind words. And audience, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, if you'd like to contact any of the guests, visit patchofland.com to contact Patch of Land, and visit joefairless.com to contact Joe. And thank you all for watching, and I wish you all a wonderful evening.